Hello YouTube. My name is Braden Gerard, and today we're going to take a look at how you can use Hono.js with Cloudflare in order to set up a server-side rendered application that uses Tailwind. And we're going to use Tailwind styling and not have to have a build. So we're going to be all JavaScript using Tailwind without a build, and it will still be performant. We'll show you the performance on the front end, and we can see how we can build such an awesome application with a very nice user interface that we don't even have to design, because we'll get AI to design the user interface for us. And then we will put that out there and have it be very performant on the Cloudflare edge. Let's jump into the code and take a look. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is set up a new Hono application for Cloudflare. So under the Hono.dev website, getting started, Cloudflare Workers, we can run npm create Hono at latest. So let's go over to our terminal and we can run that. And I'm going to run it just in this directory so that it creates it in the current directory that I'm in. And it's going to ask me what I want to build for here. We're going to say Cloudflare Workers. And then it's going to copy over my project files. And we can see that we have everything here ready to go. Perfect. So we'll take this terminal down here. And we'll open up our index.ts. Now, I want to do this with no build step, so I'm going to remove the TS here. And we're going to change this to a JavaScript file. And I also just don't like having source. I don't really need it for this project, so I'm just going to remove the source directory. What we're going to have to do is go over to our package.json here and update our dev script, which runs Wrangler, Cloudflare's CLI tool. But we're going to change this to index.js. And then under the deploy here, we also want to deploy it from index.js. There we go. We've made that update. Now we're going to go back over to our index.js file here, and we're going to get some designs that we can serve up. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to want it to serve up some static files. If we want to include a library like HTMX in order to do front end stuff, we can do that. So let's first get this serving up static files. So we're going to import serve static, and that's going to be from Hono/Cloudflare Workers. And this will allow us to serve up a public folder. So we'll make that folder over here called public. And then we will add an app.get /star. So anything that's at the root that we don't have a path for, then we're going to serve that statically. And we'll say that our root is // so from the root. And then what we have to do is we have to go to our Wrangler.toml and we have to say site, and then we're going to give it a bucket equal to /public. And that will basically allow us to serve up anything from our public directory statically on Cloudflare. It will go to our root here. So what we want to do is we actually want to make an images folder in here that will serve up images. And we also want to make a JavaScript folder in here that will serve up our JavaScript. So this would be like our HTMX if we want to include HTMX in our page. So I actually have HTMX downloaded. If you don't have it downloaded, you can download it from the htmx.org website, but we will paste that in here now. So there's my minified HTMX. And we will have a placeholder image that we're going to use in this, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I'm going to put that asset in here right now. So this is just a placeholder image that we can use in our front end whenever we generate that. So we've got our assets here in our public folder. They're being served up. Now, one thing that we want to do for performance is we want to cache as much as we can. We definitely can cache our images and we can cache our HTMX file because those are not going to be changing. So in order to do that, what we can do is we can say that we want to create a middleware that will cache anything that goes to those routes. So we'll say app.use and we'll say /images /star. So anything that comes from that route, then we're going to do an async, take the context and the next, and then we will say c.header. So set the header in Hono and cache control. There we go. With an age of 1 year. And we don't need this. We will want to copy this and also do it for our JavaScript. and we'll leave public on here so that it's caches our HTMX in the public cache. So if it's already cached from another site, we won't have to cache it again. So this is all good now. Everything's going to be cached. That'll improve our performance on the front end. And then the other thing that we want to do is we also want to return some HTML here, just so we have a basic route to return HTML from. So let me just put this, I like to start with the routes after all the middleware stuff. So we'll put that down here. And when we hit our home page, instead of returning text for hello Hono, we're going to return some HTML. Let's create one more file here called, we'll just call it our home.js. And that's going to export a constant home HTML, we'll call it, equals, there we go. Thank you, Copilot. And there's our HTML doc. So we'll export that HTML doc. And we're going to make sure this language English here is specified on the default HTML tag for our accessibility. It created us a nice head here. We're just going to call this Hono Tailwind no build. And there's our viewport set, description set. We could pass this description in if we made this a function. We're just going to leave it for now. We'll hard code it just for the purposes of this tutorial. So let's just copy this title over into our description. And the author, I'll put my name in here. And then we have our style sheet. So if we want to include any additional styles, we could include those in the CSS styles. So let's actually create that quickly. So we'll make a new folder here called CSS. And then we'll make a new file here called styles.css. And then that can be included if we want to include any additional styles. We do want to cache that as well. So let's go over here and we'll cache that. So we'll cache the CSS and we'll put the cache max age here a little lower on the styles because we don't want it to cache for quite as long. So let's just say cache for 1 week. And then we'll say max age equals, whoops, and let Copilot do the math for us. There we go. So now our CSS will be cached for 1 week. So we have our basic doc set up here, and we're going to put a different body in here once we get that from our v0.dev AI. So let's just actually put an HTML tag here that we can import from Hono. So that will give us the nice syntax highlighting here. HTML, whoops, from Hono/HTML. I'll import that. And that'll just escape our HTML for us and put it into a string so that we can make sure that our HTML is valid. And it also gives us this nice syntax highlighting because I am using a plugin here. Let me show you, called Inline HTML. And this plugin will allow us to format our HTML inside of a template literal string. So we've got our page set up. We've got our index set up here with some basic routes, and we're serving back HTML. Instead of this default, let's import that home.js. Let's actually import that up here. Import home from ./home.js. There we go. Then we can put home in here. And we can go test that out to make sure it's working. So right now, let's actually just throw something in here quickly so we can actually see something on our page. So I'll make it an H1. Hono Tailwind no build. Sure, there we go. And let's run this. So npm run dev. That will run the Wrangler that is local to your project. Let's see here. It looks like we don't actually have a name in here for our project, probably because I created the directory ahead of time. So we're going to call this Hono Tailwind no build. If you create your directory with the CLI, the Hono CLI, when you create the project, it should automatically put the name in here. I had the directory created ahead of time and I created inside of this directory the project, so it didn't have my name here. So that should be good now. Let's try running this again. And we have one more error here. What's the error we're getting now? Failed to build. Oh, I haven't installed my dependencies yet. So let's do an npm install. And now we can do a run dev. And what do we got going on here? Export const Hono HTML. That's what I need to import, not home. And sorry, home HTML. And let's try that again. I spelt serve static wrong. Woof, it's a rough one here. All right, is that going to work for us? Serve static is not defined. Yes, that's because I also didn't put it down here. My spelling today is atrocious. Perfect. Now it's working. We do have a warning here. So in your Wrangler.toml file, they want you to add a top level main field to the file. So if we go over here, we can say main equals index.js. And there we go. No more warnings. The site's loaded here. So let's open that up in our browser. And we can see we have our Hono Tailwind no build. Perfect. Okay, now let's make this look nice. Okay, we want to actually do a real site here so that we can see what our performance looks like on the front end coming from Cloudflare. So what we'll do is we will go over to v0.dev. This is put out by Vercel. It's an AI that allows you to give it prompts and it'll generate UIs for you using Tailwind. What we're going to do is, I've already generated this. I'm not going to take the time to go through, but you basically can just prompt it and keep correcting your prompts. You can see here as I start out, version 0, it gave me this, and then I asked for some modifications and slowly got to here, and then I was trying to add some settings and logout button over here. And by the time I got to version 8, I had a pretty nice, or version 7, I think actually I had a pretty nice example of this RSS reader that I wanted to demo. You can see here the menu is not perfect, but we'll fix that. We'll do that in the demo. We'll put the index on that up so that it's above the article. So this is good. Let's go over to the code. Now I don't want React code. I just want HTML code. So I'll grab the HTML code here. I will copy that. And we'll go back over to our project here and we'll paste that into our home.js file here inside the body. Okay, so we got all that there. Can remove this comment here. And we've got all our HTML in there. I'm just going to save that. And there's some formatting that could be done here, but we're not going to do that right now. But we could have this page format. I think my formatter is not set up right now correctly to format template literal strings. But all of our HTML is now in here. If we flip over to our dev version here and refresh, okay, we can see that we're getting our page, but it's not reading our Tailwind styles, because this is all styled with Tailwind from v0.dev. All the styles that are inside of the classes here are all Tailwind styles. So how do we solve that problem? What we could do is we could import the playground Tailwind and import it all in our header, but that is strongly recommended against. It's not meant to be used for production. It loads in the entire Tailwind CSS library, which is a huge asset to load in. So what we want to do is we really only want to load in the styles that we need for our project. So in order to do that, we're going to use something called Tailwind. Tailwind allows us to use JavaScript to look at the styles that are in our HTML, grab those styles for Tailwind, put them into a style tag at the top of our HTML page, and then all those styles will be defined in our head in a style tag, and then our page can see those styles. So in order to do that, what we need to do here is go back over to index.js. And we need to go up here and import a couple things. So the first thing that we're going to import is we're going to import the core Tailwind library. Okay, so we want to say import. And from that library, we're going to import extract and install. And that's going to be from @tailwind/core. And then the other thing that we need to import is we want to import preset Tailwind. And that's going to be from @tailwind/preset default, or preset Tailwind, sorry. Tailwind. Try not to get any more typos here today. Okay, so this will basically allow us to set up our configuration for how we want Tailwind configured. So the first thing that we'll do here is we will set up those configurations. So let's say install, and then we will pass that an object, and we'll give it our presets. And we'll say preset Tailwind, and then pass an object here after that with our theme. So in this case, we could set stuff like our font family. So let's set our font family. And we can say sans, sure, Inter works for me. And then we could have our serif font. And Yeah, sure, Merriweather. So this basically is like your Tailwind config, okay? But we're not going to have a config file. We can have it set up here because it'll be server-side rendered and rendered out via JavaScript whenever the page or this endpoint gets called. Now what we need to do is we need to create a little helper function here. And we'll just create that right here at the top of this page. You could separate this out into like a helper file or something. It's actually going to be async. And that function, we're going to call it server-side render tailwind or twind. And what that's going to do is going to take in a body, which will be our HTML string. And then we will get from that the HTML with new style classes that Twind's going to create for us, and the CSS, which is the CSS that we need to inject at the top of the page that will match those style classes. And here we're going to say extract. So that's the method from the Twind library that will actually do that for us. And we're going to say await body, because the body that we're going to be passing in here, remember we use our HTML helper here from Hono. That's actually, it can return an HTML escape string, or it can return a promise of an HTML escape string. So in the case that it's a promise, we want to make sure we're awaiting it here so we don't have any errors when we try and extract it. And then we're going to just make that go to string, because extract expects a string and not the type, the Hono type here of the HTML escape string. So that will get us our CSS that needs to be injected in the head, and our HTML page with new styles to replace the Tailwind styles. Then we can do a return here, and we're going to return a string by saying HTML.replace. And that's exactly, no, that's not exactly what we want. What we want to do is we want to say closing head style, and then we want to have closing style. Yeah, this is good. But in the style here, we want to say data-twind, just so we know this is generated by Twind. The CSS, closing style, closing head. Yeah, so this is perfect. So look for the closing head tag, right? So we're going to go here and we're going to say, let's look for this closing head tag. And we're going to replace it with another style tag with that CSS that we've generated, and then add the closing head back so that we can have our page still close out, but it'll have an extra style sheet inline. So that's all we need for our server-side render Twind. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to go down here and we're going to wrap our homepage inside of server-side render Twind. And then we should have our Tailwind styles loading in. So our dev server should still be running here. Let's see. But we need to actually install these libraries that we added up here. So let's just stop this for a minute and do an npm install Tailwind core and npm install preset Tailwind. There we go. And now we can do another npm run dev. And Wrangler will run that for us. And now we can open that up. And there, you can see that we have our styles. Now, it looks like we're missing our blog post images here. So let's go back over, and remember I added that image in here, the placeholder.avif. Avif is a file format that is supported by all major browsers now, and it's super small. So we're using that to give us the best performance that we can. And we're going to go over to our HTML, and we're just going to replace, I think there's a placeholder.svg in here that v0.dev generated. Yeah, we're just going to replace that with /images /placeholder.avif. Remember, this path is going to be the path relative to the path that we set up over here. And that path is just to serve at /, not at /public, because our Wrangler.toml is going to take /public, and serve static knows that that's where we're serving our assets from with Cloudflare Workers. So /star is going to be anything inside of that public folder. And then it's the /images /placeholder.avif path that we're going to be requesting in order to get these assets. So let's replace all these with that. Oh, I've got a double slash in there now. That was not the replace I wanted. Let's just get rid of that double slash. There we go. Save that. And if we go back over here now and refresh, oh, we're still having troubles here. Let's see what's going on. Oh, style.css. Okay, so I think I might have made another typo here. Today's the day of typos. If we go to the head of our, yeah, so there should be styles.css because it's styles.css here. We go back over now and reload. That error's gone. We're still having issues with this images placeholder.avif. I wonder if this is a weird local bug with the image asset. Let's try deploying this. So let's do an npm run deploy, which runs Wrangler deploy. And that will upload all of our assets. I've already authed with Wrangler, so I have my authentication, so I can just Wrangler deploy. If you need to auth for the first time with Wrangler, you can auth with the CLI, and then it'll ask you which account you want to select. You select your Cloudflare account from the CLI, and it'll deploy it automatically. So now here we have our build. If we open this up, you can see it's all here. Yeah, images are working now. I think there's some sort of weird local bug going on with my images right now. But yeah, so this is the deployed site. We can take a look here. Let's see how we're doing for speed. So we'll go over to PageSpeed Insights, and we will pop that URL in. While that's running, let's take a look at the network requests here. So if we refresh this page, we can see, oh, we forgot to actually include our HTMX asset here. So styles isn't loading because there's nothing in there, but we forgot to include HTMX in our header. So let's, even though we're not using it, let's just throw it in there so that I can show you guys, even downloading JavaScript, we're still going to be super performant here. We're going to defer it though. We don't want it to block the rest of our HTML from loading. And we're going to say htmx.min.js. And then we will save that. And let's do one more Wrangler deploy, npm run deploy. And you can see, look how fast this deploys. It takes our assets, uploads them, and it's deployed. And if we look here and refresh, we're already getting that file. This is already live on our worker here. Like, that's just insane. The speed that you can iterate with no build is crazy. We can see here that this is 0 milliseconds because we're getting it from cache. All of our assets now that it's loaded once. This looks like it was a cold start, 243 milliseconds. Cloudflare will not give you cold starts if you're paying for it. I'm using the free plan right now. It's $5 a month. So once you have your app ready and to go in production, you know, if you just pay for the $5 a month worker plan, you won't get these cold starts. And if we refresh here, you'll see the cold starts are gone now. You know, I'm getting mostly under 70 milliseconds, sometimes 100. Like, that's just insanely fast. And if we remove our cache here and do a refresh, our whole site's still loading, even with our JavaScript here in like 400 milliseconds or so, like 450 milliseconds. Like, that's just really good. Like, and even here, now that those endpoints are warm too on Cloudflare, we're getting like 200 millisecond load here with no cache. That's just awesome. So if we go over, take a look at our PageSpeed Insights. Now this was run without the HTMX being included. So let's run it one more time. And we'll see the performance that we're getting with server-side rendered, no build. So Hono served up application on Cloudflare. So hundreds across the board. I could increase the cache lifespan on the styles. Yeah, I mean, other than that, like, this is great. And this is like a real world application, right? You got images, you got icons, you got all that. I mean, it's a small page, but just to show you some of the performance gains and, you know, speed that we can get from server-side rendering things, even when we're including libraries like HTMX in our payload that's coming down. One more thing I did want to show you guys was that we can see this is here is underneath. So just to show you how, you know, our Tailwind is working correctly, let's go back over to v0.dev and user menu. Yeah, so right here we have our div that is responsible for that menu that's popping up. We'll go over to our HTML here and go find that. Let's do a search for that. Perfect. And then we'll add a Z index here. So Z-10, that's the Tailwind for Z index of 10. And then we'll just deploy it again. And we can see that that is already live. And there we go. Now our Z index is changed. So I hope you enjoyed this video and that you learned something. And, you know, if you want to see more stuff like this, maybe we'll do a to-do list app or something with this exact stack. That would be pretty cool. Thanks for sticking with me through another one of these tutorial videos. I hope you learned something about how you can server-side render Tailwind. And I hope that you enjoyed, and please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more of this content. Thanks. Have a good day.